This is Purple Radio.
Hi everyone, today I'm joined by Caitlin Conmy, who is running to be the next candidate for Durham Student Union's Welfare and Liberation Officer role. Thank you so much for joining me today, Caitlin.
Thank you.
So I guess to start off with, I'll just kind of ask you quite a broad general question, if that's okay. So if elected, what would your immediate concern be, or like main focus, first thing you think needs to be changed within the SU? Why is this the case, and how would you go about actualising this, especially if the current lockdown restrictions and pandemic are still as in force as they are today?
So I think the main problem at the moment is just communication with students about support and the availability of support, because I know, for example, I'm at Van Milder, there is support available. I'm part of the talk and support team, so I know that the support is there, but a lot of students don't know that it's there and don't know where to go to get that support. So I think the main thing would be coordinating with colleges on how they can get that information more effectively out to students, whether that be through Facebook pages, email, actual announcements from the college. I also think that it's important for all the different colleges to communicate with each other to come up with different solutions, so that you have a broader sort of idea base to create discussion about what should happen. Because if you're narrowing it down to one college, then people are going to have one specific idea. So yeah, joining together the colleges through maybe termly meetings, so that we can just have discussions and keep feedback flowing commonly and often. But yeah, that's mainly my idea so far.
Okay. And what do you think do you have like a specific main focus that you think if elected you would focus on, like mental health, XYZ, or are you going to try and do a bit more of a broad area?
Yes, so I had 3 different main sort of branches, because obviously there's sub branches to everything, but so mental health, toxic cultures, because I think there's still a huge issue with like racism, misogyny, homophobia, all those things that are just awful, but they do still happen. And then just the voice of the students, so making sure that everybody can get their feedback heard effectively, because not everybody checks all their emails and not everybody does all the surveys on Facebook, so finding ways to have student voice heard more effectively.
Yeah. Have you got any plans about how you would go about doing that, or is that
yeah so my initial idea was to create discussion groups. So in a normal world, you do that in person so that people could have an actual easy discussion. But for now, that would be over Zoom or Teams or something like that. And that just means that people can have face-to-face discussions about issues that they think are important and think that need to be focused on. And that would be with me as welfare officer, and then also different welfare teams within the colleges to kind of make it more localized to their college. But I just think that if people can bounce ideas off of each other rather than having to fill out a form on their own, sat in their own room with nobody's input, that might generate some new ideas that nobody had even really thought of before.
Yeah, nice. You touched on it slightly a couple of minutes ago, but how are you going to make sure that you work in conjunction with different college level welfare? Because each different colleges often have like their own policies and campaigns, and they push different things. And often, I think because college welfare has much more like a hands-on approach within colleges, or like it's your first kind of point of call often, how are you going to make sure that students are aware that the SU is also there as a resource centre to help them?
I think that it's really good that the colleges have their own policies, because obviously each college is slightly different in different types of students that are at different colleges, and linking in with the sort of stereotypes that everybody thinks of different colleges. But I think it's just with communication, really. I was thinking that, I don't know how I'd go about doing it, but I was thinking of getting each college to have a sort of appointed person to relay support and to go to, so students know exactly who they need to go to for support. And then those people can feed back to the SU and the welfare within the SU, and then we can all work together. Kind of makes it easier if there's one person or two people in each college to just be the face of welfare, I guess, because I know that there is already obviously welfare teams that are available, but I as a student wouldn't know one person to go to. I wouldn't know who to email. I'd just email sort of the support team and not know who would come back to me. So I think, especially with me starting my uni experience in a year of COVID, that will obviously help me with that, because it's been a difficult year. And I think if you can plan for the most difficult times, then you can obviously plan for the easier times. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. You touched on kind of this culture at Durham that's like often very negative, and as I'm sure you've painfully aware of, this academic year, Durham University has been ranked the second worst university for social inclusion in the UK. This isn't like a problem that is solved overnight. It's very much a tackling an issue, a systemic issue. So in light of this, how would you go about providing support to students who, when they arrive at university, or more specifically Durham University, and they might experience a level of kind of culture shock because it's such an alien environment? And what would your roadmap be going forwards to tackle the kind of issue of this Durham University culture that's very negative as a whole?
So I think the reason that, to start with, the reason that, or one of the reasons that the community can be quite negative is that there is a high level of highly advantaged students who feel that they make up the Durham student kind of aesthetic. So they feel that they are the typical Durham student, which then makes people who aren't that type feel that they aren't meant to be at Durham, and then sort of that negativity continues on in a big cycle. I think the main thing is making it easier for people to talk about these issues and then bring it forward to the university, and just make it easier, one, for their voices to be heard about their experience, because I feel like a lot of people don't even realise it happens because it doesn't happen to them. And also making it easier to report these incidences, because I feel like there's a lot of sort of, I guess, hoops to go through if you want to report things, and people are put off of reporting things because they think, oh, I'm just being silly, or it's not important, or the uni won't do anything about it. So I think making those points of contact easier, so that one, discussion is more normalized and people feel okay to go report it to sort of a whether that be the university or their college, or just discuss it with somebody, so that if they're feeling upset about it, sort of thing, to keep their mind at ease about the situation. And also, I guess, make resources to help people understand that there isn't one typical Durham student, or there shouldn't be, because there's a huge range of students at Durham. I think diversity is slowly getting better at Durham. It's still not, probably where it should be, but that's because I think that a lot of people hear the issues with Durham and then don't apply. So we need to kind of work in a internal sense, and that might help externally people feel like they can apply to Durham and come here. So yeah, just making it clear that, one, discrimination isn't okay, discussion is okay and should be normalized, and just teaching people, really. I think a lot of people are just ignorant to the issue.
Yeah. And you were talking about trying to encourage, or like, internal change creates external change, which will then in turn encourage more people to apply to Durham, hopefully. Let's say students have applied, freshers will be coming in September, whether that be in person, online, whatever. But one way to kind of change the systemic culture in Durham is a bottom-up approach. So when freshers arrive in Durham, being like, this is what our university stands for, these are our values, uphold them. And one of the things that the SU, I think, has done, has introduced compulsory consent workshops. So in order to officially be matriculated, you need to have passed these consent workshops. Have you got any plans to add anything to the Freshers Week, or what would your plans be going forward to create a more bottom-up approach putting the freshers first, in the sense that that's where we'll start tackling and making changes?
I think the consent workshop was really good. So it was really nice to see that when I went through freshers that you had to do that. But at the same time, it can be quite difficult because a lot of people just sort of don't read the resources and then take it as common sense and just answer the questions. And that's fine, because if it is common sense to them, then they should probably be following it. But there isn't evidence to say that everybody is following it. So it's kind of like finding ways to make that stick with people. And I guess the resources are great, but a lot of people don't engage with them. So finding different forms of resources, so whether that be not in person, but like on Zoom classes, so that it's rather than just on the screen, you do it yourself. It's kind of like a discussion with your peers, with somebody leading the discussion. But I do think this kind of bottom-up approach is probably helpful, because then it stops those people who come in, going through their university career with the wrong idea of what they should be morally upholding. Maybe adding things about inclusivity and sort of, as I say, the typical Durham student, and debunking those myths around that. And also with the consent matters, adding a bit more about like victim blaming and that sort of culture that does happen, unfortunately, a lot at Durham. And having only been here for half a year, I've seen way too much of that already. And I feel it does happen a lot within colleges, because I know some people in the year above, and they don't seem to say that it's happening as much, but obviously that's from their perspective, because I only know like 5 or 6 people. But I've heard way too many stories of people not feeling they can talk to college, and inappropriate comments being made, and those comments not being taken seriously by people who they've reported to and stuff like that. So just making clear what isn't acceptable from the get-go will make people more aware of it, because I feel like sometimes people use the excuse of, oh, well, you didn't tell me that's not acceptable, to then go and make jokes that aren't funny, and make people uncomfortable. So
Thank you. A very kind of, for want of a better phrase, Durham issue that we have here is one that concerns private housing for students. So those second, third year, fourth year masters, people living outside of college, basically. This year, the SU have run a Take Time to Sign campaign in order to kind of help raise awareness, kind of stop this panic signing in like week 3 of term. If elected, how would you further develop this kind of private housing Take Time to Sign campaign? Because often, I know that colleges often do it, the SU's done it. One criticism is often that the fact that when these campaigns are first like brought out, often it's the first time students have thought about housing, and the emergence of the campaign ends up being counterproductive because it sparks panic rather than being like, okay, everyone, it's fine, you do have time. How would you kind of approach this issue, and how would you add on to the current campaign, and also what would you bring to it yourself?
Yeah, so I think that when it first came out, when I was looking at signing a house, because we already looked at it really early, and I've got it all signed already, but those sort of campaigns did make us think, oh, should we have started looking, should we have started with that? So I think it's more not being a huge campaign about like, oh, this is where you should be looking and this is what you should be sort of paying, sort of thing, more centered around like well-being and who you want to live with and all those sorts of things, a little bit more productive, rather than this is where you should be looking at and this is where you shouldn't be looking at and this is the price you should be looking at and all those sorts of things, because they probably can come a little bit later. I think they should still be available early on, because for those people who are looking already, it should sort of be available so that they know what they should be looking at or what ideas they want. And I think we can add to that in the sense that I don't think there was much about different areas. So obviously there's clay path and there's I've got the name, viaducts and all those sort of areas, and knowing where to go can be quite difficult. But putting more emphasis on the differences between them, rather than, you know, this is where you should be, this is where all the students are, because a lot of people felt like, oh, I have to go to the viaduct because all the students go there, and then started narrowing down their search really early on to look there, and it narrows off their kind of search for a house, and makes you feel a bit pressured to live in a specific area. So, and by the time that it comes to November, there's kind of a huge emphasis on, oh, there's not going to be much left by December, so you've got to sign now. And then the colleges are then saying something different, saying like, oh, but you can sign in January. And it's kind of like voice from the students that are in the years above are saying different things than what the college is saying. So I think kind of getting that in sync and making it more like less confusing for people, really. But I think it's a difficult one because you don't want to release resources too late, because otherwise the students who are looking won't have access to resources. I think it's just the way we aim campaigns should be more centered around like the positives of Durham and different areas and stuff like that, and mental health and who you should be living with, and thinking clearly about who you should live with, rather than feeling you have to live with certain people, because that's definitely a problem, with people feeling they have to live with the first person who asks them to live with them, and then there's issues obviously further down the line because of that. So yeah, more focus on like support and living with people you want to live with, rather than feeling you have to.
Yeah. We're talking about like the campaigns in general. Have you got any specific campaigns or policies in mind, not just restricted to housing, but kind of throughout the role as Welfare and Liberation Officer? What kind of more specific ideas have you got?
So my main one at the moment is I've got a blog which I thought I could kind of extend as a mental health resource. The idea behind it would be built upon by students, not by me or anything like that, but it would be like a discussion board for people to discuss mental health issues, support issues, anything like that. And at the moment it's poetry, but it can be kind of like music or any form of writing, any form of expression, so that people can express themselves and feel like it's more normal to express yourself than just sit in your room and worry about it. Because I feel like even now there's a stigma of going to somebody and asking for help, especially during COVID. So when people got COVID in their college rooms, there was a huge stigma behind it, like, oh, you're the one who got us stuck inside for 2 weeks, and that has a huge strain on people. If there was sort of a safer space where people can discuss those feelings and those sort of issues, then it might become more of a normal thing to talk about and a more normalized culture. But as I say, that would be dependent on how active students were with it, because it wouldn't work unless there was unless students discussed sort of as a sort of discussion board blog sort of idea. So something like that. And as I've already mentioned, like discussion groups, support groups, safe rooms. So in a normal world, the easiest way would be to create a kind of almost society where students can go and talk about how their week has been. It can be positive, it can be kind of like reflecting on issues that have gone on, and that can also help the SU with knowing what the issues are of students. Of course, you'd have to keep that confidential space, but it can definitely help with generating ideas and also making people feel like they can discuss and have somebody to go to discuss those issues that are their peers rather than the university. Because it can be quite scary to go talk to, a professor or somebody at the university about issues when it can feel like they're quite separate from the student body, which is another issue. And I feel like that shouldn't be the case, but it is currently. But yeah, creating those safe spaces making it more normal to talk about mental health. It's a slow process, but kind of building up on it.
Yeah. How are you going to make sure that these campaigns get student engagement? Because it's all, especially kind of in COVID, it's all well and good sending out an email, but I think, like you said, not everybody reads the emails. Not everyone is. That the SU as a whole is often seen as quite a bureaucratic, inaccessible institution, and I think people are often put off by that, and therefore go to colleges because it's more of a. I mean, in first year, it's your home. It's this very like close-knit environment. How are you going to make sure you actually engage students and get students, like you're saying, to come to these discussion groups, engage in these discussion boards? Because it's all well and good having campaigns and policies, but what matters is having students involved and engaged with them.
Yeah, I think just using as many different social media techniques as possible. I don't think you're ever going to engage the whole student population, because it's almost impossible to do that. But going through colleges and getting like videos sent out so that those people who don't feel comfortable reading big bits of text, because there's some people who kind of struggle with their university work anyway, having to read a huge amount, then having to go and read a long email can be quite difficult. So putting that into video form, as I've been doing with my campaign so far, making kind of nice posters on Instagram and stuff like that catches people's attention, using Facebook, using Instagram, using whatever social media, Twitter, that people use, still using email because some people do engage with that. And just really broadening, I guess, the media usage, and also obviously in a normal world you'd then be able to put posters up and all that sort of thing, but currently it would have to be sort of using as much social media as possible, using getting the colleges to put out videos and resources, and having pages possibly on Duo that make it easier to access things like that. Because I know I'm part of the sociology department, I know there's a whole page on social media on support resources on Duo, because that they were like, well, people aren't seeing where the support is, so we'll put it all on Duo, and that's really helpful because it's all there on one page. So doing something like that across departments, across colleges would be beneficial, and just making it clear where those things are. As I say, if we were to kind of appoint a person who could be the representative of each college for welfare, so that students know exactly who to go to, they can then go to them if they aren't aware of where resources are, and they can point them in the right direction. So it's kind of using both people and as much social media as possible at the moment anyway.
What would you say the SU kind of welfare and liberations department kind of group as a whole, what would you say that their biggest weakness currently is, and what would you work on to improve most if you were elected?
Yeah, so I think their biggest weakness at the moment is students knowing who they are and knowing how to contact them. So I think there should be more communication between the welfare officer or the welfare team and the students directly, rather than just through colleges. Obviously through college is important because people are more likely to listen to college than straight from the SU, because as you say, it's kind of a distant, it feels like a distant almost organisation than us. But making the welfare team closer to the students and having that that sort of normal discussion and feedback forms and all those sorts of things that make students feel that they are being listened to, and actually responding to those as well, because I think it's all well and good having a survey where people fill out their issues and then never responding and saying what's happened to fix that. So I think releasing that data and making it clear exactly what the student body wants and how we are going to tackle that. Obviously we can't fix everything, but just making it clear that we are going to try and we are listening will make people feel more involved and more as if the SU actually cares about the students rather than just being a separate entity.
Yep, thank you. Finally, thank you so much for speaking to me today. It's been great. just half a minute. Just why should the SU body vote you to be the next Welfare and Liberation Officer? Sell yourself.
Yeah, so as I say, I've only just been here for half a year, but I think that actually works at my advantage because I've seen sort of the outside view of the lads group chat, all of that stuff that happened in the summer, coming into the uni and then experiencing the sort of inner side of it. And I've got, as I say, both that outside view, both that inside view, the talk and support team that I've worked with, and they're brilliant. But I've definitely noticed that communication can be quite difficult and quite sparse. So using that as a help for moving into kind of SU level rather than just college level. I've had experience with mental health blog stuff, as I've already spoken about. I worked in a mental health kind of position in my old school, so that in my sixth form, so that kind of might help me with voicing issues and talking to a big student body, even though that was 800 students compared to however many there are at Durham. And I just think that I am passionate about all these things, and that's really the most important thing, because mental health has been an important issue for me for a long time. I know that's a cliche thing to say, but it's just true. And yeah, I think that I will just represent people the best I can possibly represent them and listen to their issues and bring that forward. And that's the main thing that's needed in an officer.
Yep, great. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been really good. And yeah, good luck with the campaigning.
Thank you.
For more of Purple Radio's interviews with candidates in the run-up to the SU election, click on the playlist now.